Hello, everybody.
Well,
How are you? Mike Barrera. For Dave, it's good morning because he's out in England. How you doing tonight, Dave?
I'm good. Obviously, it's just gone past career, so obviously quite the big time gap. But I'm looking forward to the first ever show.
Yeah, Dave is from across the pond, which is where the name came from, across the pond, across the pitch. We're trying to bring you a different perspective on the Union, talk some stuff that maybe people don't get a chance to talk about in the normal Twitter sphere that we usually find ourselves on. So, what the show is about, it is a bit, like I said, about the Union. We want to talk about the games, the players, their history, etc. Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a Union fan all the way from England?
Well, obviously as Mike's mentioned, I'm from the United Kingdom, but I became a Union fan really because I'm a Philadelphia sports fan. I've got family friends in Philadelphia, and that's sort of where my fandom of Philadelphia and love for the city came from. And I think obviously being from the UK, watching football, that's what I'll be calling it as we do the show, it was the easiest sport for me to sort of watch. So after watching the Eagles and falling in love with the Eagles, the Union was the next best thing. And I think my fandom sort of peaked there when the MLS is cut back came on, and sort of I watched the occasional game beforehand, but that's when I first properly sat there and watched every single game, and it's been going on since. It's a great team, and it's
Yeah.
great, and hopefully, yeah. So hopefully we can show you and tell you why we think the Philadelphia Union are the best team in Philadelphia right now.
You know what? I've been saying that every time we talk on the All About the Birds chat, Dave. I always say the Union are the best team in Philly because they're a good franchise from top to bottom. They really know how to deliver a good product. For myself
Yeah,
personally, I've been following the Union now since probably their third or fourth season, and within the first couple of years, even after the Open Cup loss or losses, I should say, I fell in love with
yeah.
the team. I fell in love with the Sons of Ben and what they provide to the fans and how welcoming they are to everybody. So if you are new to this team, new to this franchise, please don't feel like you're jumping on the bandwagon. We want more fans. We want to talk Union with new people and to teach you everything there is to know about this franchise. Phil chiming in as always, and Jason, I saw you as well. Thanks for joining. So I guess just to kind of briefly talk about the franchise itself as a whole for some of the newcomers, and then we'll talk about the games and the players. The Union play in Chester at Subaru Park, which is an absolutely amazing ballpark. If you haven't gone to a game yet, please, the tickets are not that expensive. Go to a game and enjoy the atmosphere. But they're a young team. They've only been around for about 11 years now, and they have a lot of homegrown talent as well as international talent that absolutely play their heart out every single week. Dave, what are your thoughts on the franchise as a whole to a newcomer who doesn't know about the Union yet?
I think as you look at it from the outside looking in to a newcomer, it's actually it's quite young. It's a team that's on the up, and if you look at their form, their performances, and their form over the last couple of years, 2-3 years, you can really see what Jim Curtin's done with this team. He's now been able to implement his plan, implement his style of play, and what he wants to do. And I think I was listening to a couple of quotes the other day, and someone was saying how Jim Curtin, obviously we'll get on to him a bit later on in his contract extension, how he has been with these academy players since they were 10, 11 years old. And now you have the likes of Mark McKenzie, Brendan Aronson, who have just come through, and you've got the likes of Paxton Aronson and Jack McGlynn, these sort of younger players. Now these players have played with them, and they can sort of spread that message to come in. I think the performance, the passion they show on the field, the fight for one another, I think just that they embodied the Philadelphia sports spirit.
Well, you mentioned the Philadelphia sports spirit. These aren't just players from across the nation or across the world. The Union do strive to bring in homegrown talent from the area, from Pennsylvania, Delaware. I believe Mark McKenzie is from Delaware. They want to get people from our backyard because honestly, when you're rooting for them, you feel like you're rooting for one of your own. You're not just rooting for some draft pick from Alabama or anybody else. You're rooting for one of your own. Again, which makes the franchise a bit more special for the fans and for the franchise as a whole. So, like I said, I don't want to talk too much about the history of the Union. We will discuss the Sons of Ben and the Union franchise history at a later episode. But no, we want to get right to the meat and potatoes of this chat tonight. So the first thing we'll talk about is the Jim Curtin extension. You were on the presser today. Can you kind of share your thoughts on Jim Curtin and what he had to say today and recently this week?
I mean, Jim was obviously quite a big. I think it was quite big. Obviously, his which was a bit up in the air, wasn't it? Obviously, it was his contract would have ran out at the end of this season, which was about October, November time. So to get him time over 2 years was quite big. But I think today he was just all eyes focused on the Atlanta game, which is what I love about Jim. He's always so focused. He's always thinking ahead of the next game. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to get involved in the bigger picture. He just wants to take things bit by bit. And again, today was very upbeat. He was, as I said, preparing for Atlanta, and he's looking forward to having full fans back in the stadiums.
Yeah, you mentioned Jim's, I guess, demeanor. A lot of times after the Union have a win, they post an all access recap video, and it always starts out with Jim Curtin addressing the team, and you can see how he's a leader in the locker room. He knows how to prepare these guys, and I would say no matter what, they're always ready to play. They're always ready to fight as hard as they can for Jim Curtin, who at this point in time is the most tenured coach in Philadelphia. He's been around for years now. And he's been through the gauntlet. I mean, I'm included. There was times when I wanted Curtin out because I wasn't happy with the performance. I wasn't happy with what the team had produced 5, 6 years ago. But now, as he's grown with this franchise, as the franchise has given him better players, you can see what he's capable of doing when he has the pieces in place. So, I can only say great things about Jim. I've met him once. He's an awesome guy to talk to. So I'm very happy for him. And also along with Jim, we have Tanner. Ernest Tanner, who's the sporting director, and what he's done for this franchise. We're talking, I guess, as well, the players that he's brought in, including Gazdag. So if you want to talk about and kind of share your thoughts on what he's done so far with this team.
I was just going to mention, obviously, as you said, that Jim Curtin's a great bloke, great person. As you've met him on 1-to-1. I mean, in the press conferences, he gives you so much detail. He gives you such a great answer, as perhaps some managers would perhaps sort of just dust over your question. He puts the time in to give you a really good detailed answer, so you can go back and you've got a great quote that you can use in an article. And I think I've got only good things to say about him. But regarding Tanner, obviously his transfer business this year has looked very good so far. Obviously, Leon Flack, who we'll mention a bit later on in the show, has been fantastic business. And in the press conference today, and I think in the sort of national news within America, The Athletic did a piece on him earlier this week. He is starting to get national attention in America. And I think that, again, that is a credit to what Tanner does and his sort of scouting outlook and looking for the best talent for the team.
Yeah, once Brendan and Mackenzie were sold over the past offseason, people worried about what Tanner was going to bring into the franchise. Is he going to bring a top player with the money? What is he going to do? And people were upset, like, hey, they haven't brought in a big signing, but they bring in Flock, like you mentioned, who's actually been one of the unsung heroes on this team so far. Jose Martinez goes down for 3 games. He comes in and fills the void immediately and actually makes a very positive impact. We actually spoke to Jack and Glesnes during one of the press conferences. They mentioned how playing behind him, felt comfortable. He really is able to lead the defense playing at the bottom of the diamond there. So that's a great signing by Tanner. And then we just brought in Gazdag not that long ago. So, unfortunately, he was now injured at the Euros. It's tough because that would have been the first ever Union player to play in the Euros, so we didn't even get to see him in one game. He didn't even make the roster or the subs for that first match. So, what do you think about Gazdag, about that signing so far?
I mean, the signing, obviously, he put in a good shift for the last 15 minutes. I think it was a DC United game, wasn't it, when they won 1-0 and Chibirko scored. I think, he put in a good shift there. You saw glimpses of what he could do on the ball, but I think those are difficult games, especially for new signings who are more flashy, who are more forward-thinking, because you've got to defend, you've got to sit back, and you can't really show off what you can do. But I think those sort of games for those players are quite important because you get a bit of an insight into how they play defensively. And again, I think I'm really impressed with what I saw from him, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing him in a Union shirt very soon. But I was going to say, it doesn't look like we'll be seeing him very soon.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's unfortunate he had to leave the Euros because of some sort of injury. I believe they mentioned it was a knee injury, something minor, more so a bit of discomfort, which was great. As a Philly fan, you're always like just ready for the next injury. You had Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Andrew Bynum. So you're always kind of worried about, is this injury going to be the next player to go through that gauntlet of injuries?
Yeah.
But hopefully, we're praying that we get to see him soon. Where do you think that he fits in this formation? Do you think he's a starter? Do you think he's off the bench? Like, how would you position him on this
Um,
roster?
I think he's an interesting one, obviously, because he's a very versatile player. It was made very well known in the press release the team put out when they first signed him, and he even said it himself. He's a very versatile player. He can play up front as a striker. He can play in behind the striker himself. Obviously, thanks Jason for the comment there. He can play behind the striker. He can play as a box to box midfielder as well. So he can play anywhere. And I think obviously him coming in, it perhaps gives Jamiro Montero a bit more of a leeway to do what he can do on the pitch, whether it's sitting in. But again, it gives them options, doesn't it? It gives you options. It gives you depth in what is a long, hard-working season with the amount of traveling you do.
So a couple things you talked about, and I'll mention as well. For one, the depth. Last year, and this is just, it was one of those things where every time Fontana came into the game as a sub, he made something happen. People were like, well, why is Fontana not a starter? He should be starting more often. And then finally this year, he gets his chance. He didn't really make a whole lot of noise as a starter, in my opinion. And I think that Gazdag gives you at least another choice besides Fontana in the diamond as a sub. Or on the
Yeah,
other side as a starter. I mean, I would hate to take Flock out, but right now, let's say for the Atlanta game, you're going to have Martinez out. I know Gazag's not playing, but just in a hypothetical situation, you would put Flock back at the bottom of the diamond in front of the line, defensive line. You put Montero out to the left, and you put
yeah.
Gazdag up top. At least that's what I
Yeah,
would do. You
I think
saw
that's
it
probably the best thing. Yeah,
right,
I'll do
yeah,
that
and you
definitely.
and Jim mentioned Montero, playing as on the left side in the midfield, about how he can kind of sit back further back. He can see the field better, and he can make his move with more space compared to being the top, closer to the strikers. So
Yeah, that's right.
Gazdag
Yeah.
gives Montero the ability to now play multiple positions, um,
So,
and like I said, more depth. Now, what do you think of the score? The roster so far in terms of the players that we've seen,
um,
and how do you think Gazdag will play with them?
I think obviously Gazdag. I think in terms of the players that the team's signed, in terms of the players they brought in, I really think he's probably one of the more higher profile players they've actually signed. If you look at his track record in Hungary, he's a Hungarian international. If you compare it to the other sort of European players they've got, Glesnes, Jabirko, those sort of players, they haven't played international football. They haven't played in the top division of the country they've come from. Whereas Gazdag just won, I believe he just won Player of the Year with Budapest Honvéd. I think that might be this could be perhaps a signing, the first sort of higher profile signing the Union make, whether it's this year or going into next year.
Yeah,
I don't know if you think the same or
right, and
also.
just in terms of the goal scoring, Casper has done well. Obviously, he's been on fire this year.
Yeah,
But besides that, I mean, Corey Burke's had a couple nice goals from his starts. You've seen Miro obviously contribute as he always does, but there's not a whole
yeah,
lot of scoring depth on this roster right now. So it allows you to just have somebody else who can attack and hopefully take the burden off Casper, because he has had times
yeah,
in his Union career he's gone quiet.
yeah,
As any player will, they go through their own drought. So you need to have somebody to step up in his place and take over
yeah,
that load, because he scored 2 goals a game. It's just not
yeah.
realistic
No, I mean,
at all. So let's
as you said,
yeah, go ahead.
as you said, obviously Casper has gone through those dry spells where he struggled. The MLS back cup last year was a perfect example where he struggled to really get into games. He wasn't perhaps as impactful. And if you remember that tournament, it was Sergio Santos who was the big hero of that tournament. He scored so many crucial goals to help the Union get to the semi-final. And I think he's probably been one of the bigger disappointments to start the season. Obviously, he's been injured a bit, but when he has played, his pace perhaps hasn't been as impactful as it once was. I don't think he hasn't really been as positive as he was last season.
No, I can agree with that, and that's where Corey Burke being on the roster full time now allows you to be like, all right, Santos isn't producing in this moment. Let's bring Corey in. And it seems like every time he does come into the game, it's almost instant magic. Something happens. I mean,
Yeah,
and when he does start, it's again he's putting goals on the board. So it's so far so good for him, which I liked Corey before, um, a couple seasons ago. So it's good to have him back full time.
yeah.
So let's go to the next topic here in terms of the players and what we've seen so far this year. What do you think of the roster thus far? as a whole? Anyone stand out in particular with you?
I think obviously looking at the whole roster as a whole so far this season, I think for my personal player of the year, I've got two names here. I've got Jack Elliott or Jacob Gazdag. I think that partnership there at the centre of the defence has been so important for the Union this season. They've been the rock there. They've been, you could argue, perhaps the only real constant, apart from Bedoya along the right hand side. They've been perhaps the only real constant there for the Union, they've sort of set up the foundations to build for their defensive success this season.
Yeah. No, it's funny because last year you had Elliott and Glesnes kind of alternating because obviously Mark McKenzie was,
But yeah,
in charge there for the time being. And you were, a lot of the worry was, what's up, Jason? How you doing? A lot of the worry
yeah,
was that you would lose McKenzie and you wouldn't have that strength in the middle anymore. Um,
no,
Personally, I think they've transitioned beautifully. I also think
yeah,
that Gaddis retiring and Mbaizo back there as well has helped the defense as a whole. Um,
yeah,
he has his moments occasionally, but I think overall, I think that unit has been great, and they've been great in the middle. In terms of the
yeah.
defensive middle, we also now heard about the signing of Alvis Powell, so he's coming in. So I mean,
Yeah.
he's been in the MLS before. How do you think he provides to the depth of this roster?
Well, he's an interesting signing. He's a really, really interesting signing for me personally because obviously he's coming from, I don't know, for a little bit. He got released from a club in Sudan, I think it was. So obviously he's come from quite an interesting place. But again, he's had over 100 MLS appearances. He's an experienced right back who's still got room to develop. He's only 26 years old, and he's going to provide depth behind Bizo. Obviously Matt Real, and I'm not sure who the other right back is. I think the other right back's like 18 years old. So obviously he's now got the experience there to, sort of perhaps give Bizer some advice as well, and perhaps get better defensively, because I think Bizer's probably the Union's quickest player going forward. But yeah, again, only positive things to Bizer. I'm looking forward to seeing what Alvarez Powell can do.
Yeah, I mean, just I guess talking about Bizo a little bit, along with Bedoya, the pairing of them together has been really nice to watch so far. I would say one of Gaddis's shortcomings was he wasn't always the best crosser. He
Yeah,
really wasn't a magician with his footwork. I guess I'll put it nicely. He really couldn't blow by somebody with
no,
a move here or there. So far, Bizo has done that. He can put a move on somebody. His crosses have been pretty effective overall.
yeah,
Whether they result in a goal or not, that's a different story. But he's overall
yeah.
made a pretty good presence on the offensive side. Would you agree with that there?
Oh, 100%. I believe his first cross start of this year was against Saprissa in the CONCACAF Champions League, and I'm pretty sure it provided the Kasper Shabirko goal. So again, as you said, it was that immediate impact. And I keep going on and on about to you. This team lacks pace, and he down that right hand side, he's the only player that provides pace forward and get the team up. And I think, again, as you said, Ray Gaddis perhaps wasn't as good with that. He was more the traditional right back who's defend first, get stuck in, and Bizo is sort of the more modern day right back who likes to get forward, uses pace, get in advanced position. So again, I quite like the turn in pace because Bedoya can defend. So I'm a big fan of Bizo this season so far.
It also gives you, I mean, I guess we haven't even talked about Kai Wagner yet, and how great he is on the left
No,
side. It gives
yeah,
you a dual threat on both sides. You cannot just push them to Ray's side anymore. You have two offensive sides that can come in and cross to the box very effectively.
yeah,
Obviously, Kai is one of the best young backs in the entire MLS, getting recognition from all over. So I like the addition of the team so far in the defensive side of things. I think they're producing at a very good level. Now, in terms of going further up the roster, Martinez has been a great player for us, but Leon Flock comes in when Martinez gets suspended and immediately makes a positive impact. What have you seen from him so far in terms of just a
I mean,
handful of games so far?
well, I mean, it's funny you mentioned Flark. Obviously, I think for me and you, I think we'll both agree he's been probably our young player of the year this season. I think he's only 21 years old, which is obviously incredible. Quickly he's adjusted. But as you said, with Flark's defensive ability, I think Curtin said in his press conference earlier today that he has literally been almost perfect defensively. Obviously, Curtin's obviously a perfectionist. The only time he brought up his mistake, he said he was a bit iffy on the goal against Atlanta United in the CONCACAF Champions League at home. But apart from that, he's been perfect defensively. And as you mentioned, Kai Wagner's very good going forward. Wagner did mention that he, obviously, Flack was when he was covering for Martinez, he said that he missed having Flack in front of him because that gave him the license to go forwards. And obviously with McGlynn or Fontana there, he had to be a bit more cautious because they perhaps weren't as solid defensively. So I think that is sort of the praise for the sort of player he is and sort of how quickly he is taking over the defensive duty on this Union team.
Yeah, I mean, you see him, tracking down players. He's always in the right position at times. The Union have experimented with Jack Elliott in that position, covering for Martinez before. He's done fine. He's done admirable. Jack Elliott obviously is one of the strongest defensive backs that we have, and he always seems to be in the right place at the right time. But when you do pull him forward into Martinez's usual spot, then what happens to his position next to Glesnes? So now that McKenzie's gone, having someone like Flock being able to be versatile really makes a massive difference to this team. So we're going to see it on Sunday when they play Atlanta United. We're going to see him most likely in that position again. It's hopefully, it's a shame he couldn't score his first MLS goal last week. It got taken out because of the handball. But it's good. You want to see him be in position to either score a goal, or have an opportunity to score. So you're seeing positives on the front. You're seeing positives on the back as well.
I was going to say, moving on, obviously, discussing perhaps our individual performance of the season so far. Who has had the best performance of a Union player in a single game this season?
It's hard not to say Casper at times because of how well he's played scoring the goal. I mean, I think not enough said about Andre Blake. I mean, you and I are always trying to post about Andre Blake and how great he's been on a regular basis. But he does save the games on a regular basis, which is a good and a bad thing. You don't want him constantly exposed to a clean shot, but you trust him that when he's back there, he's going to make a difference every single match. He never has a bad match.
And I think exactly as you said, never has a bad match, and he's so reliable. Obviously, I think his game in Atlanta, when the CONCACAF Champions League, first half he had to keep the Union 0-0 going in at half time. I think he made about 4, 5, 6 saves before half time, and just to have that sort of rock behind, I think that's one of the best goalkeeping performances I have actually ever seen in my entirety of watching football. He was that good that night to keep the game where on another night they could have been 4-0 down at half time, the time could have been over. Obviously they went on to win 3-0, we'll discuss that a bit later. But I think again it's a testament to how good Blake is. The only ever goalkeeper to be drafted with first overall pick.
Yeah.
And the Union chose him over Zach Steffen, who's now the backup goalkeeper at Manchester City.
Yeah, no, it was a bold move at the time, and it's obviously paid dividends. As you said, Atlanta United, they don't win that game with Andre Blake playing the way he did in that first half. And then obviously the game takes off 3-0. They destroy them in the second half. You don't get to that point. And now we're having a different conversation on not only do they struggle in the CCL, they started off the MLS poorly, and now the conversation has shifted entirely compared to what we have now, where they're in second place. If I'm looking at the standings correctly, they're obviously in the semifinals for the CCL. So it does put a lot on him. But how about you? What players stood out for you in terms of performance this season? Anything in particular besides Blake?
Again, I'm just a Casper has obviously been
unreliable.
Obviously, Casper's been unreliable up front. Obviously, he scored top score with the team with 8 goals this year. But I think his game against Portland was probably, for an outfield player, probably the best performance of an outfield player so far this season. He scored. He had 3 goal involvements in the first half. Obviously, 1 got ruled out for offside. But he was so dominant in the air from set pieces. He was winning everything. He scored. And I think Casper's obviously probably for me been outfield. Obviously had a bit of a rough start in the MLS, but his performances in the CONCACAF Champions League have proved vital to pushing the team forward into that competition as the semi-finals, which I can't rave about Casper Shabirko enough with the stuff that he's done for this team this season.
Well, you actually, that's my brother. Thanks, Carlos. You actually talked about Casper being the set pieces of the gym during the press conference. You said, he's obviously more involved. It's extremely obvious that he's more involved in set pieces. And Jim mentioned how he's working hard to put himself into position to get those goals, to get the set pieces. It's not that long ago that the Union were pretty bad at set pieces, where they could not score off a corner, off a free kick, off anything that related at all. And now it seems
Yeah,
that they can do it. They scored 3 goals off set pieces against Portland, which is,
yeah.
as a Union fan, unheard of for us.
I know what I mean.
Um, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, as you said, they scored 3 set pieces there, and going back to that game in Atlanta, where the first quarter they pretty much had the entire game. It was obviously a well worked. It was obviously something they worked on in training. They put the ball towards the front post. Shiburko made the move around the back. Header was flipped towards the back post, and Shiburko was there just to tap into an empty net. It's something they've clearly worked on this season. And having players like Corey Burke and Kasper Shiburko, Glesnes, and Elliott, big tall players that they can target in the box, that's just been crucial to their success on offense this season.
Yeah, I mean, Jack had a goal. Was it last week against Portland?
Yeah,
So again, because he's put himself in the box just like Glessens does, and given himself the opportunity to score when the set piece comes to him, as we've seen already so far this season. So I really liked what I've seen from that. They have given up a few set pieces more than I'd like. I think against the Red Bulls, they gave up like 12 set pieces. Now that's not always in your control. Sometimes it just happens with the flow of the game. So if you can just lower that a bit, Curtin has mentioned that a lot of times the higher amount of fouls taken on the roster have been from the strikers coming back to defend. So if you can kind of fix those up, fix the corner kicks a little bit, limit those numbers, you're looking at an even stronger defensive team than you already have to begin with. All right, so we talked about the player. Anything else about the players before we continue to the next?
I was going to say maybe they've scored a lot of goals this year. Have you got a particular goal of the season that you've liked so far, or goal that sort of sticks out in your mind?
Oh my gosh, I kind of like the goal in Chicago where Montero is kind of falling back and he tosses it to the middle to Corey Burke, who just awkwardly kicks it into that was a great goal so far. Miguelin almost scored, I think, twice in that game as well. So we almost had a couple of good goals now. How about you? Any goal in particular that you like the most?
I mean, you stole my personal goal of the season. That was a fantastic goal, all in all. The fact Montero was able to accurately cut the ball back from where he was, and then for Corey Burke to not only strike the ball as well as he did, but to keep the ball down and put the ball into that top corner, giving the goalkeeper no chance. Incredible finish. And cheers, Chip. Thanks for the support you guys have given us so far with the All About the Birds Network. And we really, obviously, really are thankful for your support so far, guys. But again, going back to Corey Burke, fantastic fit. It was a fantastic finish. But I think one of my other personal favourite goals was we keep bringing up the Atlanta game in the CONCACAF Champions League, but there was that third goal where they were just literally, it was just a 2-on-1 with the goalkeeper, and they just calmly passed it across, giving Brad Guzan no chance. Fontana just slotting. That was just sort of the icing on the cake of what was a perfect for football, which was a don't mean to swear, but it was the perfect. It was the shithousery. That was the perfect. If you're going to show a team or show someone the art of shithousery, you'll show that game, and that was just perfect. And as I've said to you on so many occasions, that is one of the biggest and greatest in Philadelphia Union history.
Yeah, it really was. I feel like we keep saying that every time there's a big game, that's the best game they've ever played in history. That's the best performance, but they do. They keep rising to the occasion. They make the semifinals in the MLS is back tournament. Unfortunately, they lost to Portland in that one, but you keep seeing this team putting themselves in position to, make a deep run in some tournament or putting themselves in position at the top of the table. And speaking of the table, as of right now, and pull up the table as we speak on my phone. New England is currently in first place, and the Philly is currently in second place. Now you look back on the New England game, the New England game at home, they were down 1-0 before Casper goes up and puts in the back of net, and that continues their momentum for the next few games. If you do not score that tying goal at home, you don't get that point against New England. And now you're still within striking distance of them at the top of the table. So another important goal, maybe not as flashy of a goal, maybe kind of a fluke in terms of the value of the goal, but it was pretty important because it continued the momentum that they had from Chicago the week prior. So we talked about that a bit. The next topic we should discuss is the MLS and CCL so far as a whole. We've kind of again talked that as well. So in terms of the CCL, talk about what you've seen from them in the last couple games.
Well, obviously it's their first ever time in the tournament, so coming into it, I was a bit obviously as an outsider, as a British person, I don't really follow the CONCACAF Champions League. This is my ever watching it, obviously because of the union. So I was a bit skeptical going into that first game in Costa Rica because I don't know what the standard of football is like there, what the intensity, what the humidity of the game is going to be like. But they were fantastic. I think they dominated both games. I think it was a credit. I mean, Jim Curtin's obviously come out and said quite a few times this season, this team isn't built to win on the road. Well, they won 4 of their 5 games and they kept 5 clean sheets. So I don't know what is going on. What is going on with there? But those first 2 games in the CONCACAF Champions League, I think, gave that team that extra bit of belief that, you know what, we can do something in this competition. Obviously, they went on to Atlanta, and as we've mentioned so much, they went in there and they weathered the storm.
Mm-hmm.
They pretty much secured their qualification to the semi-finals in that first leg. They were solid enough to weather the storm again in the second leg, got a nice 1-1 draw. Now they're 2 games away from, about 3 games away from history.
Yeah, no. So the first game against Saprissa, they win 1-0, and as a fan, you're just kind of nervous going to that second game, coming home. You're like, okay, can they do it again against a solid team? Yes, the team I believe at the time was a bit shorthanded, but still, are they going to be the typical Union team from 4 or 5 years ago, or are they going to finally step up and move on to the next round? And they did. They beat Saprissa 4-0 at home. So it was a great performance there. And you go to Atlanta, like you mentioned, they weather the storm, they move on. But at the point of all that's going on with the CCL and all the positivity that you find in that particular tournament, you come back to the MLS and you're not playing well at all.
No.
They had the game against was it Inter Miami? You had the lead at home and then you blew it in front of your home fans, and it just felt like, are they going to sacrifice the start of the MLS season for the CCL? But then
Curtin,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Curtin did make it quite obvious at the start of the season that if he had to, the MLS was going to come second. They were going to try and do what they could do in the CONCACAF Champions League. But obviously, as you said, they lost into Miami at home. And then I believe the second MICFC, where they lost 2-0 in that game. Obviously, Martinez gave the ball away. We conceded. And then he got sent off 2 minutes later. I mean, but you were at that game. I believe you were at the game, weren't you?
No, that was the one game I wasn't at. But
really?
You're right. They had the game within reach, and then as soon as they get that red card from Martinez, it's out the window. And then not only do you get the red card from him, now he has a 3-game suspension on top of all that. So you're thinking, you drew at Columbus. That's awesome, good for you. But then you lose 2 games that you at least had a chance to get a point in one of them, or 2 of them really. And then you had the 3 games they had. What was it? Chicago, New England, and the Red Bulls. They beat Chicago on the road 2-0, which was very, it was
big one.
I wouldn't say it was surprising, but it was very refreshing to see how they came out in that game. And that was actually the game you saw McGlynn, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, it was the first McGlynn game, and I thought again he was really impressive that game. He didn't look like a 17-year-old that hasn't graduated from high school yet in his first MLS game.
Chicago. Scored in that match too, which would have been just an icing on the cake. And then, hold on, we got a question. Okay, I have a dumb question. Do the Union play in 2 leagues simultaneously? You mentioned the CCL and the MLS. So, great question, Chip. For all the newcomers out there who don't know what the hell we're talking about. So the MLS, Major League Soccer, is the league that the Union belong to. That's the one they play in every single year.
Yeah.
Because they won the Supporter Shield in 2020, which is the regular season title across the entire league. They had the most points across the entire league. They won the Supporter Shield. Because they won that, they are now qualified for the CCL, which is, 16 teams, right?
The CONCACAF Champions League, 16 teams, which is a continental tournament, which is played amongst teams from Mexico, Honduras, Canada, obviously the USA. And so they're played simultaneously, but your qualification for the Champions League isn't guaranteed. It sort of depends on what you do in your actual league.
It's like an extra playoff essentially for your franchise. Now the tough part for us, and what we're kind of going back and forth now between the MLS and the CCL, is, and Jim mentioned this extensively, they played a ton of games within. What was it? They played 7 games within 19 days
Yeah,
or something
less
like
than three
that.
weeks.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. See, it's a good team to watch. They're getting international recognition. It's not just the kids from Chester and Pennsylvania. They're getting known across the world. Um, but yeah, they played a gauntlet of games within that span, which again made us concerned about the MLS. So going back to what you were mentioning, you have McGlynn come in. You have 3 games from him. What did you see from him over those 3 games?
I think he worked very hard. I mean, even Jim in his press conference after the Chicago game or before, it was either the New England game or the Red Bulls game, that he worked hard. Comfortable shifting over, so when the play was on the right hand side, he was comfortable shifting into where Flark would be. And again, he was good going forward. And I think again, he was positive. It was a positive play. He's forward thinking, pushes forward, and I think he's got a bright future in this team. It could be perhaps the next Brendan Aronson for a player that young. Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
well, there you go, Eric. Okay, so Eric is a friend of mine on Facebook. What's up, Eric? Nice to have you on. So, did they make the U.S. Open Cup, or is that even being played this year? I had heard it would have been based on the MLS standings, but haven't heard anything since. That's a good question. I don't know if they're having it this year or not. I know
I'm
they
not
obviously
sure.
didn't have it last year. As Eric knows, the U.S. Open Cup has been one of the saddest times of this franchise's history. I was unfortunately at both home games when they lost to Seattle and Kansas City,
Yeah,
and watching Nagir's ball off the post, missing that goal, is something that's just burned into my memory for years and years. And then they get embarrassed at Houston, which is just not something I'm going to talk about. So, Eric, that's a good question. I'm going to look it up tonight, and I'm going to get back to you next show, and I promise I will answer that question. So that's a good question. I appreciate you chiming in, buddy.
very good question. I was going to say, obviously, as you mentioned, that I want to go back to that New England game you mentioned. Obviously, they just come off the back of 2 big home losses.
Yeah.
Going into that game against New England, obviously the whole talk was got fans back in the stadium. We've got more fans back in the stadium. We need to break that duck of not winning a home game. Obviously, we hadn't lost a home game all of last season, so it was quite a new thing for that team. Obviously, you're 1-0 down with 5 minutes to go. Cashman doesn't score that goal. You lose 3 successive home games. There's a bit of a spiral. Fans perhaps start to get a bit nervous. So again, that was such a big goal, and not just in terms of sort of just in terms of like when it happened, but in terms.
There he goes. See, Eric knows the struggle. He was that. He not only was he there as well. He watched the road one, which was one of the most embarrassing losses of this franchise's history. And it was, and kind of going back to Chip's question, the US Open is very similar in terms of it's another tournament that MLS teams can qualify for. It's played during the season at the same exact time. These guys play, so that's kind of a good segue there. But yeah, it was an overall. Going back to your conversation about the fans, though, Dave.
Yeah.
So I've been to about 3 home games this year as a fan, and as some people know, we have media credentials now for the Union. So I've been in the press
Yeah.
box now for 1 game, and the 1 game I did get the seats for at the press box was the Revolution game. And you can feel the energy from the crowd from just 5,000-6,000 players, or I'm sorry,
Yeah.
5,000-6,000 fans, of course. But we've asked the players now. We've asked Coach Curtin, how do you feel playing in front of 19,000 plus on their feet again, like you have been previously? And they're
Yeah.
all just excited. Even at minimum capacity, I can tell you from being in the stands, it feels like it's a full house sometimes. They are electric. And for those who have not been to Chester, it's a beautiful field, beautiful stadium. There's not a bad seat in the house at Subaru Park. It really is a great place to watch a game. And then when you're there with thousands of other people and you're cheering on and the Sons of Ben are going nuts, there's absolutely not a better venue in Philadelphia besides the Link, in my opinion, to watch a game. And I've been to Eagles Dallas, Eagles Giants, great atmosphere. This is on par with that atmosphere, 100%. So now, Dave, back to your point with New England, though. The next,
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Carry on.
no, go ahead. The next game after that is the Red Bulls game. So, what were your thoughts on the Red Bulls game?
I think that was a big win. I think Jim mentioned it obviously because it was like the back-to-back home games. As Jim mentioned, they needed to get that first home win. Obviously, went in, got the home win.
Mm-hmm.
I think Corey Burke scored in the first half. And again, I think
Yep.
they haven't really looked back since. I think they're unbeaten in quite a few games now. If
So
I'm
to
correct,
talk, no, you're absolutely correct. So they beat Chicago, they tied against
yeah,
New England, and then they won with the Red Bulls, DC United, and Portland. So now, one thing you mentioned about the goal with New England, or I'm sorry, with the Red Bulls, is they scored that goal in the 9th minute. Okay, DC
yeah,
United scored that goal in the 45th minute in stoppage time in the first half. The third point I'm going to make is they score against Portland in the 26th minute and the 31st minute. And Jim mentioned this on his press conference as well. It's great if you're going to score a goal late. That's wonderful. But this team is built to score early and then hold that lead because they're not
yeah,
built to score 3, 4, 5 goals a game. They're built to score one or two and then just lock down and suffocate the other team. So,
yeah.
talk about the importance of that on your end of seeing these early goals for the last couple matches.
I think again, as you said, it's been important. It come at crucial times in the game where the other team perhaps hasn't settled into the game yet. As you said, you score in the 9th minute. You just less than 10 minutes into the game. Teams are still trying to find their way into games. Sort of the battle for possession, battle to implement your style of play. It's a goal after 10 minutes. That all goes out the window. You immediately have to chase the game. Things go into your mind. Whereas if you're Jim Curtin, okay, we've got the early goal now. We can sit back, lock up, and hit them on the counter attack, hit them on the break. Which I think, as I keep banging onto you, and as I've banged onto you so often, that's when it's perfect if they had a quick, pacey winger to just stretch the game in games sort of like that. Even when there's 20 minutes to go, you sacrifice one of the strikers, you have the who can stretch the game, push the other team up the pitch. I think that's sort of the one thing this team is lacking pace going forward.
Yep, exactly. Oh, wait, here we go. There's Eric. Absolutely can't wait for the 23rd playoff game. The last time it was allowed to be the full. That's true. The last time it was a full capacity crowd was that playoff game, and I was unfortunately not there. But watching on the TV, you can feel the energy
Yeah,
off the TV from the field, and
yeah,
I can't wait to just feel to see what the energy is going to be like with full capacity. And we've seen the Phillies
be
already have
rocking.
38,000, for a Yankees game this past week. It's gonna feel really awkward at first, but I'm sure right away it's gonna feel amazing. So that's a great point there. So
Yeah,
let's talk about these next couple of games. We have two games coming up. We want to discuss obviously what's ahead of us. So we have Atlanta United on the 20th of June on Sunday.
Sunday. Yeah,
What are your thoughts for just seeing it on the schedule? What do you think off the
it's gonna be a tough one. I think
bat?
Jim very much alluded to it in his press conference. He said it's going to be a very tough game. They're a very good team. Obviously, the Union went there and won 3-0 this year, but they're no mugs. Obviously, they're a good team in a big stadium, which is going to be sold out as well. I think that's going to play a big factor in the game. It's going to be a sold out stadium capacity, first time. They're going to be up for it. The supporters are going to be up for it. They're going to make it hostile. I think it'll be difficult. I think, as Jim said, I think they'll be happy to go back to Philadelphia with a point if they get it. So again, I think if they go there, they get a 1-1 draw, get a 0-0 draw. I'll take it. I'll be happy. Go focus on getting it with 3 points against Columbus.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that kind of worry me right off the bat. For one, coming off an extended break on the road, which worries me right away. Typically, in past seasons, you come off a break and you're used to that energy in a stadium. Right
Yeah,
now, you're not used to that kind of energy like you have been before.
yeah.
So, will they be overwhelmed? Will they not rise to the occasion in front of the crowd? And
I think
Atlanta has. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
as I'm saying, I think not having Jose there will probably be quite big emotional player. As you said, not rising to the crowd. He's one of the main players that sort of rises to the issues and troubles. So not having Jose there could be a blessing in disguise.
It could. It absolutely could. I mean, you see him tonight get into a bit of a scuffle already for the Copa.
Yeah,
I mean, it would not be any game if Jose doesn't make some sort of noise. And you know what? I'm going to talk about Martinez real quick. So people in Philadelphia gravitate towards players like Jose Martinez. I don't if you're not a Union fan and you're just a Flyers, Sixers, Eagles fan. Think of a player that hustles 24/7, who will get in somebody's face, who will be the enforcer for the team. That is Jose Martinez in a nutshell. He's absolutely
yeah,
the the best Philly athlete we have on the roster. So if you want to gravitate towards one player in particular, like you saw him with Higuain last season, just get right in his face. Like I don't care who
yeah,
you are, I'm Jose Martinez. This is the Union. I'm not going to back down from anyone.
Yeah,
That is Jose Martinez in a nutshell. So it's great to see him get a bit scuffly tonight, and we're going to miss him for sure. But in terms of Atlanta, I'm just worried about the revenge factor to me. They get
yeah,
embarrassed at home in obviously in a major tournament in the CCL. They draw on Philly, but it really didn't matter at the end of the day. So
yeah.
I'm worried that they rise to the occasion and
I
get their revenge against Philly.
Well, I'm looking at the opposite way. I think all the pressure's on them in this game. All the pressure's
That's
on
a fair
them.
point.
I mean, look at it for
Fair
the
point.
Union. They go in, like, they lose 2-1. Okay, you lose 2-1 in the MLS. Winning away from home is probably the hardest thing to do in the MLS because of all the different factors that go into it. Obviously, they're going to have the full capacity. They're going to have the crowd who are going to be expecting them to win. They're going to want the revenge. And again, they're mid-table in the MLS, so they're going to need to win this game to sort of push themselves up the table. As a Union, they've got a bit of breathing room within the playoffs, and they've got the Champions League to focus on. I think the Union going into this game sort of can look at it as a free hit and go, look, all the pressure's on them. If we can go there and get a result, perfect. If we lose 2-1 and we play our best and we come away with positives, so be it. But I'm looking forward to the game.
You mentioned the standings. You're right. Atlanta is in the 8th position right now behind Nashville with 10 points. Philly obviously in second place at 14 and New England at 17. So this is a pretty big match. If you do pull off a win here, you're just keeping them further down the table. If you let them win the game,
Yeah.
they're right technically in third place. There'll be 13 points of Orlando, who has 12.
Oh,
So it,
really?
it does actually play, yeah, it does play a big factor in terms of the standings, obviously early on, but still.
Yeah.
In terms
Yeah.
of the gambling side of things, big gambler, you are as well. Atlanta United right now, money line is plus 135. Philly is plus 185 on the money line. And then the spread right
Really?
now, plus Philly is minus 175. Atlanta United minus one is plus 420. I always
Yeah.
like Philly on a plus number because of Andre Blake. I feel like they can always at least cover a spread with him in net.
Yeah.
So just if for the gamblers out there, if they want to hear a couple spread bets, there you go. There's
Yeah.
that. So now next thing on our list, Columbus. Right off the bat, what do you think of Columbus?
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, before we head into looking at the Columbus game, perhaps we could look at the potential lineup, who we think is going to start, how Jim Curtin's going to approach the game. Maybe I think um, I want to sort of hear your opinions on who should play and what formation.
I have a feeling he's going to go back to what they did when Jose was out the first time because it did kind of get the ball rolling. So they'll put McGlynn out left. If Gazdag was playing, obviously then you would have a different story, but he's not. So
Yeah.
I think they'll go back to it. I don't see why they wouldn't. I feel like it was comfortable. McGlynn did kind of he gained a bit more familiarity on the pitch. You could kind of see it every single game. He was a bit more comfortable. And then
Yeah.
Flock at the bottom of the diamond seems like like a good fit right now. So I mean, what do you think? Anything different from the
Yeah.
typical
I mean,
lineup?
obviously, I think, as you said, the back five would be the same. The Andre Blake and goal, Bizo, Elliot Glesnes and Wagner. I think Flack will sit in front of by the back five. I don't know if it caught your eye the last game against Portland, where he had the chance to bring on McGlynn, but he played Matt Real on the left-hand side of that diamond.
That's true. I forgot about that. You're right. So Matt's an interesting one. He doesn't get a whole lot of play, and he saw
Yeah,
more last season than I think this season so far. That's a good point. Maybe bring him on just to see what he can do. In terms of the strikers, obviously Casper's up there. I'm
Casper. Yeah,
assuming, and now Sergio went down recently, so we'll see how
yeah, he
he's
came
doing.
off. Yeah, I don't think there was much word of him in the press conference. I presume he's okay. I think it could be Sergio because of his pace, and he did cause Atlanta issues in the CONCACAF Champions League game. I think obviously Bedoya will be on the right hand side. That's a lock. Montero in front, well behind the strikers. I think Matt Real could be a dark horse to play on the left hand side this game because it will allow Kai Wagner to still advance forward and do his thing. Whereas it was McGlynn, he'd have to be a bit more cautious.
That's actually a very good point. Okay, you know what? I wouldn't mind to see that happen. Yeah, let's see if that comes, even whether it be starting or as a substitution.
Yeah.
At some point. Okay, great. So we'll do that for Atlanta.
Yeah.
Now for
And
Columbus, segue into that.
I was going to say, do you want to do a score prediction for the game, or?
I'll do a 1-1 draw. I think I'd be fine with a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, I think on the money, I'd say 1-1 draw as well. I think with the bookmakers as well, I believe the 1-1 draw is plus 500. So
yeah, the on the book, I might just close it, of course. Yeah, I'm sure it's around there. You're coming out of a break. We've seen the Union in past years with worse rosters collapse after a break.
yeah,
So if you can just start off, get a point on the road, come home, I think that's a win across the board. And anything above that is just icing on the cake.
okay, exactly. Yeah.
Really. Yep. Okay. Next year with the Columbus Crew, and that game is on Wednesday, June 23rd. I believe it's at 7:30 p.m. Columbus finally comes to Philly, which is just awesome to finally not be in that freaking state anymore. What do you think? What do you think on the Columbus so far?
It'd be an interesting one. Obviously, they.
Yeah, go ahead. Just Eric mentioned the offense going to the midfield being brutal with a makeshift lineup. That's a good point. But we'll see. We'll figure it out from there, and kind of hopefully Curtin has a couple tricks up his sleeve. So go ahead. What you were saying about Columbus?
I was going to say they're coming off a game against Chicago Fire, and Chicago their home is running at Chicago, so I think they'll. I don't want to sort of throw predictions out there and sort of what's the word, sort of put down Chicago, but I think you're going to look at it. I think that's a win. It's a win for Columbus, I think, going into this game. So they'll be coming into this game off a win. I think it'll be a tough one for them. Obviously, they did well to get the 0-0 draw in the first game of the season. But I think obviously the full crowd, I think that might play. Again, I think the pressure might be on the Union if they come into this game off a loss. And with the full crowd, they'll have the expectance. They'll be expected to put on the performance. I don't know whether you think that could play into perhaps a bit of nerves for them. So I think that could be quite a nervy game all round.
You could see it that way. I mean, we've kind of talked about this with Atlanta. Like, how do you perform in front of the crowd again? They obviously had a taste of it with the smaller crowd so far, so maybe they won't be too overwhelmed by it. Going back to the last couple games against Columbus, obviously you get the draw early in the season. If I remember correctly, last year when they played Columbus, it was like a fluke goal that ricocheted into the net. I believe it was off McKenzie. And if someone hears me and I'm incorrect, please correct me. But they've played pretty tight with Columbus the last couple of times. Obviously, they're essentially an equal team in terms of caliber. But having them here for the first time in a while, I think will make a difference overall.
Oh, absolutely.
Excited to see what they can do.
I'd say having the fans in the stadium as well, I think it will. I think for the first game, it will probably be a bit of a double-edged sword. And as you said, the last game, obviously, I believe they lost 2-1 in Columbus last year in the league. Again, they've been quite close games. Obviously, Columbus have won 2 of the last 3 games, so obviously the Union will be hoping to come into this. Well, in fact, Columbus have won 3 of the last 4 games. Hopefully, the Union will be. That might add a bit of an incentive to the Union to come into this game and try and win.
Yeah, and Columbus has some work to do too. They're only in 6th place right now, so they have some climbing to do as well. I mean, the Union have done their climbing. I'm sure another team will make their run to the top of the table, and Columbus is certainly one of them that will make that noise. I mean, that goes without saying. But any other thoughts on the Columbus game? Do you have any score predictions? Any sort of feel? I mean, we'll probably know the lineup more after we see Sunday's game. So
yeah, I think it's a bit too the Columbus game. Obviously, I think it will. I think Sunday's game and how Sunday's game goes. I think because if they perform really well on Sunday, I think Jim will probably go with the same team that played in Sunday's game. If they end up going there and they get beat 3 or 4-1, I think there could be wholesale changes to that team. But I think again, I think Wednesday will be more of a celebration than it will be anything else. Obviously, everyone back in the stadium, give the players the lift that they need to help will them on.
Yep. No, I agree. And it's funny you mentioned the lift. I believe they mentioned previously in their press conference how having the fans in the stadiums will give them that the later half of the game lift. There are times when you've seen the Union just not deliver at that final goal, the final third of the offensive attack. Maybe that crowd being there will give them that energy to put that final one to the back of the net. So fingers crossed that it's a good game. I don't want to see a home game turn into
Yeah,
a bad performance. So that's basically the Columbus Crew game. That'll be next
yeah,
Wednesday on the 23rd at 7. I believe it's 7:30, and then
yeah,
Sunday. It's an afternoon game on Sunday, is it not? It's let's see
yeah.
here,
7
2 o'clock
p.m. over
p.m.
here, 2 p.m. Yeah, I was
7
gonna say.
p.m. for England. Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say it works out perfectly because obviously I'll have the Euros on before the game, watch the Union, and if the Sixers somehow take it to Game 7, you have the Game 7.
talking the
I mean,
Sixers in the show.
yeah,
We're not talking the
honestly,
Sixers. We're not
I
going
was
to
gonna say.
ruin our night, Dave.
Listen, it's
uh,
been dwelling on my day all day, but I was going to say, obviously, we said in the chat last night, we do want to get too ahead of ourselves with the Union because obviously they've got to go to Atlanta on Sunday as well and try and win that game. If they go and win that game on Sunday, then we'll really push the Union are the best team
start
and we'll
bragging
best
a bit.
positive.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that. I like that.
I was going to
All
say
right,
also,
so go ahead. Yeah,
um,
go ahead.
you might be in the press area for the Columbus game.
Yes, so that's a good point. I've submitted my application for, or the submission for that. Hopefully, I'll be in the press box again. I haven't been in there since the Revolution game,
Yeah,
so I know they mentioned earlier today on an email the press box will be more full. The seating obviously will be at full capacity. So it's an exciting experience, an exciting time for All About the Birds. We are expanding our Union coverage. I mean, really, this started from me and Dave saying, "Hey, you want to cover the Union for the website? Yeah, sure, let's do that." And then
yeah,
it kind of took off. So uh, hopefully you guys have liked what we've put out so far, and hopefully you guys like the show so
absolutely.
far as well. Speaking of show, we have another show next week, Thursday night, 8 p.m., same exact time, same exact place. But Dave has a special guest, hopefully coming on, possibly. Can you talk about
Yeah.
that
And
at all?
obviously, we want to not just we want to try and broaden our horizon to the MLS as a whole and give an outlook of the entire league. So I'll have my friend who's also from the UK, Sam Tilly, who will come on either next week or the week after, and he'll give us a bit of a review from what's happened over the last the 2 game weeks before our next show, because we're in quite a unique position where we've got a lot to preview this week, and then we're going to have 2 games next Thursday where we can review both games. So obviously he'll then come on and he can discuss what's happened on the MLS in the last 2 game weeks, then also perhaps provide a preview of a couple of the bigger games and sort of some of the bigger players or some of the players to watch out for across the MLS next weekend. So obviously on top of that, as we mentioned as well, we're going to be reviewing the 2 Union games, hopefully 2 wins or 2 positive results, and then just talking about all the other news that has occurred throughout the week, really. Obviously, the press conferences and if there's any transfer news.
Yeah. Yeah, we first started this agenda. We're like, all right, what are we going to talk about? There's not a whole lot to talk about. There is. And then next thing
Yeah,
you know, the Curtin signing, Gazdag gets hurt. These things sort of wrote themselves.
yeah,
So I think next week we'll have even more to talk about. We're going to break down the games more in depth. If you do follow us on Twitter, Dave, I'm going to probably get your Twitter handle wrong. It's Dave GFC Miller, right? Your Twitter handle?
yeah.
Boom. Okay, I still remember it. And then
So, yeah.
myself, oh,
Oh,
that's right there,
perfect.
right here. M Barrera one
That's
three two three Twitter. We will put we'll usually live tweet the games. I know Dave does it for Sunday. We do a match recap. We do interviews with the press conference. We put out interview
yeah,
recaps. We do a bunch. So please follow us. Anything Union, we will be tracking online. So
yeah,
let's wrap up the show. Obviously, we have to get paid. All About the Birds has a wonderful group of sponsors. So let's just run down this list real quick. The first one is Manscaped. Father's Day is just around the corner. That's right. It's a couple days away. You probably need a gift for a hairy dad in your life. I know I'm one of them. Make that dad proud this year and get him Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right. The Lawnmower 4.0. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code AATBirds. Imagine surprising your dad with a sleek, well-designed, and optimized body trimmer that says, your balls will thank you. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and user code AATBirds. Don't forget, do not forget, you came from your dad's balls. This year, show your original home some love with Manscaped. After Manscaped, we have Odds. This is a pretty cool one. OddsJam is #1 software platform for sports bandits. Their software shows you how to make risk-free cash off FanDuel, DraftKings, and any other book you can possibly imagine with their R betting calculator. Really cool thing if you're kind of trying to expand your gambling repertoire. So it's a no lose bet type of deal with the R betting. So please sign up today. oddsjam.com. I've done it already, and it's pretty awesome. Next thing on our list, we have statement games, another way to get involved with gambling. Check out statement games for a fun new way to fantasy sports and entertainment. Win gift cards and prizes, and it's absolutely free to sign up. I signed up. I spent $0 because it's free. Sign up at www.statementgames.com. And I believe the link, yep, it's somewhere down there. Yeah, right on the line. Following up with that is 99 jerseys. I have not bought anything from 99 jerseys yet. I'm sorry to 99jerseys.com. I know Chip has, and it looks awesome. You can get 20% off your next order by using discount code AATBirds. Check out their wide selection of quality, kick-ass jerseys of your favorite sports movie characters and throwback jerseys, some of your favorite stars as well. Again, order today at 99jersey.com and save 20% off by using discount code AATBirds. And then finally, if you want to do something for us, for All About the Birds, we have products on our website as well. Go to All About the Birds shop on the website, get your across the pitch gear and all About the Birds network gear from all different kind of shows. Fairway to Heaven has some 5 female cap, which is really nice. As you can see right here, I'm trying to figure out this screen right there is a new Across the Pitch t-shirt, which I already ordered. Dave, thank you. I already ordered that as well. If you shop on the website from June 22nd to June 24th, you get 15% off everything, the entire store, 15% off from June 22nd to June 24th. And then last but not least, please follow, like, subscribe, share all of the social media that All About the Birds have to offer. We have a Facebook account, we have a Twitter account, we have a YouTube, Instagram. If you miss a show and you're like, crap, I missed Thursday night, it's Friday morning, what can I do? Don't worry about it. You can go into YouTube, you can go into any Apple podcast, you can subscribe, follow up the show, listen to it, fast forward. If you think we're kind of annoying, you can skip over and find another. So that is Across the Pitch debut kickoff episode. I appreciate you guys chiming in. Dave, as always, it's a pleasure talking to you. For you, it's
pleasure.
6:00 in the morning, so please get some sleep. That's everything, guys. Good night.
That's awesome. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.